Hi guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. I'm out here in the guts of the Australian bush. Look at that nice cloud cover. I might throw the drone up after this and see how that goes. Now what I was going to say to you, Maddie, on my favourite bike, the Classic 350 Reborn, but I'm doing a sort of review really on Classic 500s. So what I will say to you is, this month, 10 years ago, I bought my first bike in a Classic 500. And that was a black chrome, and during that time, 10 years later, I've had 22 Royal Enfields to date. So, you know, that's a pretty good run on Royal Enfields over 10 years. Oh yeah, I suppose some of you might say, yeah, but I've heard you say a couple of times you've only had 15. Well, it's 15 Classic 500s, including those were 2 Classic 350s. And then I had a Continental GT 535, a Himalayan, 2 Interceptors, a second-hand iron barrel, and 2 of these 350 Reborns. So yeah, that's 22. But more importantly, I still think the Classic 350 Reborn 350 is the best bike of the lot. Now you might say you don't find that a bit hard to believe, but no, these are by far I think the best bikes. But there'll always be people out there who want to ride the half litre or 500 version, and I'll try to give them a few little tips on that particular bike. But if you were on the fence and just come up and ask me which one, I would say the 350 Reborn's the best. Find this entertaining and a bit of information that helps you long term in buying a Classic 500 in the used market. Why not give the clip a thumbs up, and you may even want to subscribe to see the balance of the clips. And I'd also say to you, it'd be a good idea if you, instead of watching the first 2 or 3 minutes and buzzing off, there's a lot of people on the first clip that lost a lot of valuable information, and then later on they'll come back and ask me. And if you come back and ask me on something I've already put on the other clips, I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to give you a smiley face. So that's what you'll get, and the indication will there, he's already told us once, but we never bothered looking. So keep that in mind, and everyone will be happy. 350 mightn't have as much power as the 500, but let's look at it this way. If you bought a Classic 500 and compared it to the Classic 350, well, naturally, the 500 is a lot better than the 350 because the 350 is only carby, and like I said, I had 2 of those. But if you compare both those bikes to this Classic 350 Reborn, I think this is by far the better bike. Now, if you compare, if I think this is the best bike to a 650 Interceptor, well, naturally a 650 Interceptor is the best bike Enfield made, and it's far superior than this, so it's better than all of them. So when I get here telling you about bikes, I'm not biased between this. As far as I'm concerned, I only ride them, get a bit of enjoyment out of them, and there's no loyalty to me with the bikes. Like, I ride, tell you which ones I think are the best. If they're no good, I tell you they're no good. And that's after that, if you take what I say with a grain of salt, or you say, well, he may be right, and go from there. So as far as that goes, I hopefully cleared that bit up there. And now we might get into a bit of a talk while I'm... Hey, hear a kookaburra in the background? Don't hear many of them around. Yeah, so what we might do is have a bit of a talk, and I'll give you my ideas on, if you were out to buy a Classic 500, which one you'd go for out of Series 1, 2 and 3. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, Series 1, 2 and 3, in the description I'll leave a link there, and you can check for yourself. And it only goes for 5-6 minutes. And I will advise you guys, like a lot of you, by looks of the clips, you're only looking at for 2 or 3 minutes and going, and you're missing the most important parts. So it's not as if I'm going to come back and repeat it. If you're a bit lazy and you don't want to watch the lot, well, that's the way it goes. So if you're out to buy a Classic 500 and you've got your heart set on either Series 1, 2 or 3, here's what I'd recommend. First thing, I would not buy a bike that's got a sports exhaust on it. And the reason being, any bike I've ever put a sports exhaust on a Classic 500, I've given the bike a workout, even from new. So it would be very hard for someone to get on one of these, once you put a sports exhaust on it and you want to listen to the bang, not to abuse it a fair bit on running. And I'd be more inclined to buy one with a totally stock, and that way you can get onto the bike yourself afterwards and fit a sports exhaust, and you know it hasn't been had the guts flogged out of it. So next up, I'd take absolutely no notice what the vendor says to me about the bike, or how well he looked after it, or anything like that, because at the end of the day, he's only there trying to sell you a bike and you're there to buy it. After that, and you pay him, he couldn't care less. So keep that in mind. He might be friendly and carrying on to you while you're talking, and you think, oh, he's not a bad bloke. But there's plenty of good blokes out there at the end of a sale have turned nasty. And over the years, I've had a chance to deal with a lot of people, and I reckon a lot of them are two-faced anyway. They'll tell you one thing and it's the other. And that's working on my experience sort of buying cars, where I've gone through about 150 of those plus these bikes. So you do find when you got money, they're your friends. After you've done the sale or you want to get back to them, probably in most cases they couldn't care less. So we've established straight off that if you're chasing a Classic 500, and I'll put a couple of shots up during our sections of looking here, so it'll keep you a little bit interested. Yeah, so if you're looking at a Classic 500, we've established one, don't buy one with a sports exhaust, and two, don't buy one till you test ride it. Okay, we've established you don't want one that's got a sports exhaust on it, or I wouldn't want one anyway. So next up would be you want to take it for a test ride. So you'd have to say to the bloke, somebody work around him, okay, if I taste this for a test ride, and if I like it, well, you can't say talk to the wife, because any person that said to me, I'll talk it over with the wife, either one has got no money, or two, they're not interested in buying. So keep that in mind. If you hear the word wife comes into it, that's a bloke who's definitely not going to buy or has to have permission to buy something. So he's no good to you anyway. So take the bike with a bit of luck out along the road, and you only have to do one thing. You've got to sit that bike on 100 kilometres an hour and check it for vibration. Don't ever ask him, does it vibrate? Because you've thrown him into a curveball there where he's going to lie to you, and he'll tell you anything, and he won't be too keen on letting you go for a test ride. But if you say, yeah, I wouldn't mind riding one of these, been thinking about buying one for a while, and I'd like to go with the boys in the club and all crap like that, any other crap that goes through your head, you can tell him. You might have a chance of getting the test ride, but don't ride it around town because it proves nothing. You've got to get out on the road and sit on 80 to 100 kilometres an hour and check it for vibration, because vibration comes in exactly at 80, 85, and by 100, if it's there, it's starting to come in strong, and when you get to 110, it should be singing. So you'll know if you've got a good motor or not, or does it vibrate. The key to is get that bike out on a test. Yeah, so you've got a bit of money to play with. What are we going to go for? Series 1, 2 or 3? First off, I'd forget about Series 1. If you would have watched me first one, I explained a few things to you. Series 1's the bike with the front offset forks. They're the ones that used to be known by quite a few members to have handling issues and get the high-speed wobbles. They've also got the worst wiring of the Classic 500s, especially like a bird's nest in the headlight, bad in the fuse boxes. Chances of them sort of catching a light underneath or in the headlight area are pretty good. And they also, the 2009 model doesn't have a kickstart. And if you missed the first one, if you plugged off before you even got a chance to listen to me a bit about kickstarters, don't believe the crap if you're talking to the guy, if it hasn't got a kickstart, that you can get one fitted for $200 or $300, because you might be able to buy it for $200 or $300 the parts, but to get the kickstarter fitted, you're going to have to pull the motor out of the frame, split the motor, put the kickstart back in, and if you've got a good bike to start with on the off chance, that might not be the same bike when you put it back in. Or should I say, when you put all of it back together, back in the frame, and you've upset how it was running before. I've actually seen 2009-10 models for sale here in Australia, and the people sell them for $5,000. You'd have to be desperate to pay that sort of money. I'd reckon $2,000 or $3,000 maximum, and I wouldn't even give them that for it. But that's how it goes, and if you don't know these bikes, and you haven't gone through all the models, well, you'll get burnt, and you can only blame yourself. Now, if we look at Series 2 from 2012 to 17, Series 2 had the 19-inch front wheel, 18-inch rear, revised front rake, and by far the better bike. Now, you never had anyone complain about on a Series 2 bike that it had handling issues. No high-speed wobbles, anything like that. They just ran along really nice. So you won't have any trouble with a Series 2 bike, and you won't get out there and all of a sudden the bike will go into a shake at 100 kilometre an hour and scare the crap out of you. So as far as that goes, also in the headlight area, they revised all the wiring there. They end up putting shrouds around it and make them nice and neat. They had better plugs on them, and overall a better put together bike. So and they also improved the quality of the seat. So if you put it all together, the Series 2 was a big improvement, and you wouldn't even go to a Series 1, you just bypass it and go straight to a 2. Okay guys, so let's talk Series 3. Series 3 came out 217 to the end. It had ABS, a standard, rear disc, and I think it was running a 17-tooth front sprocket. I always thought they were a little bit quicker than the older Euro 3 bikes, but in actual fact, until I pulled the side case off, I didn't really know at that stage that they had just put a smaller cog on the front there by one tooth, and the bike seemed a bit quicker, but in actual fact it wasn't. So as far as that goes, you've got the dual channel ABS, and you've also got the better swing arm. Okay, Warro, in that case, which one would you go for? Well, if it was me, I'd go for neither. Like, I'd pass on all of them and go to a Classic 350 Reborn, because I've put 5,000 kilometres on this bike and it's been trouble-free. There's many of Enfield I've had in the backyard there, brand new, and had trouble right from the start, or, you know, like ones that have had the springs in the wrong way, really bad vibration in the pegs and stuff like that. This bike I've got now is really good in all areas there, but there's a lot of people that don't like a 350. You know, they want to ride the big boy, you know, the half a litre, or, you know, they want more bang for their buck. But on my way out here, I was cruising along at 100 kilometres an hour on this one, and I tell you what, this new 350 is a far better bike than any of the Classic 500s that I ever rode. So apart from that, well, if they ever bring out a 500 in one of these new ones with a J motor, what a ripper that'd be. Anyway, to answer the question, which one I'd go for, I would possibly, in my case, I would think about going for a Series 2 bike. Now, the reason I'd go for a Series 2, because if you ever want to do any work for them, you can put bolt-on goodies on them easy on a Euro 3 Series 2 compared to Euro 4, and you know, they've got the emissions, the Euro 5 emissions, and they're a bit hard to do anything, and you can't tamper with them. You can't put a booster plug, you know, you have trouble putting power commander, anything like that on those, where you can put it on a Euro 3, and the Euro 3 sort of go all right, but the safest one of all would be the Euro 4, the last one. And we'll talk about now 3 faults you can find on any of these Enfields. Here are 3 faults you can find on any of these Enfields from 2009 up to 2020, or the last one made. The first fault would be the Series 1, where you got the wobbles when it gets from anything from 80 kilometres an hour over. That's a real pain. I've got a bit of a fix for some of these things, so I'm going to put up another clip later on accessories, on areas to look for on the bike where the problems are and stuff like that. So that should be pretty interesting. But geez, the mosquitoes are bad here today. So you've got the high-speed wobble on Series 1. Now on Series 1 and 2, the next thing you've got to look for is cracked frames. There were quite a few reports on both of those in the Classic 500, G5s especially, that they had cracked frames. And number 3 would be that and you've got Series 1 and 2, you've got a drum brake at the back. Well, there are quite a few reports over a period of years of the drum brake models getting rear wheel lock-up and actually throwing a couple of people off the bike. In fact, one of the dealers I had bought one of the bikes off here in Australia, I was there talking to him one day about, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I said to him, have you ever had rear wheel lock-up on one of these bikes? And remember, I was buying a new one off him. And he was laughing about it, and he said, well, as a matter of fact, I have. He said, a couple of days ago, one of the bikes were in here for a service, and I took it for a run. And he said, I went up to one of the traffic lights and went to apply the brakes, and the back wheel locked up on me. And he said, almost threw me over the bars. And he said, I was lucky that I wasn't out along the road when it happened. He said, I could have been in a vast amount of trouble. So, you know, and that was actually from a dealer. So that's something for you to think about there. So they're the 3 main things to be aware of. 1, cracked frame. So I think a lot of that, there was a bit of weight on the things, but later on the next clip I'll just show you where to look for cracked frames. Then you've got the problem there with the handling on the Series 1, cracked frames on Series 1 and 2, and then also on 1 and 2 the drum brake problem. So keep that in mind, and you should be happy that you know this information. Yeah, so on the next clip we might go into the whole bike, and I'll show you or tell you whereabouts all the problems are on these Classic 500s and where to look, how to fix them, and how it may save your bacon if you're out along the road and the bike breaks down or something to that effect, or stops or won't start. How you can follow a sequence and look through and go to that stage and hopefully get you back on the road and home. Once again, I'll tell you now, 5,000 kilometres on this Classic 350 reborn, not a problem with it apart from a wonky sort of stuck speedo on this particular bike. I fixed that up myself. It's still running well. 6 months ago after that fix, it was replaced under warranty. I still got the speedo, I haven't bothered putting it in. But apart from that, I can only tell you how things are going at the moment. The way I look at it, this is by far the superior bike, and you know, it's just a matter of whether or not you want to ride a 350. But as far as that goes, well, I will say one thing. I always like to be straight and honest on the channel, and if this 350 reborn was no good, honestly I would have sold it by now, and then I would have went back and bought 2 Classic 500s. But it's not the case. I bought 2 of these 350 reborns instead because I thought they were a better bike, and I am still 100% happy with what I did.